Now, I should let you know that I haven't preached since Easter. So if I seem a little rusty, that's the excuse. All right. In fact, I had to ask myself, can I even do this anymore? I almost forgot how. Maybe I did. No, we're living through some extraordinary times. Times such as no one would have anticipated, and certainly times that no one is particularly thought of in so many ways. Although people, even people who are alive today will think back about what their life was like, for instance, during the Great Depression or the Second World War, and they will have some fond memories. Those memories will not have much to do with poverty in a negative sense, or with violence and bloodshed. They'll remember something of the time. And I'm sure that those of us who lived through this time, and not all of us will, but I'm sure that those of us who do live through this time will have some fond memories of it, somehow. But so much depends on how we look at what it is that's going on. I have to apologize for this microphone and keep shutting itself off. We have to reframe so many ways our experience or what it is that's going on in order to get sort of a deeper sense, what's called a sensus plenior, a fuller sense of the story that's being written as we live. And so much depends on the way we look at things, how we look at it. The story is told of two men who were workers, sometime in the Middle Ages. And a fellow came from out of town and he saw them working. He asked them, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, my job is to pick up this stone from this pile of stones over here, and pick it up and put it on that nice even stack of stone that you see over there. It's very hard work, but I get paid, so I just do it." It's very nice. And he went over to the other fellow and said, "What are you doing?" Although he saw that he was actually doing the same thing. And that man said, "I am building a cathedral. I'm building a cathedral." He had a completely different attitude toward what it was that he was doing. The action was the same. The strain was the same. Probably the pay was the same. But he was about something that was way beyond picking up a stone and putting it someplace. People are asking, especially in church circles, among bishops and priests, what is going to become of the church? What will happen to the church? What will happen, for instance, in a very specific way? Once, eventually, the dispensation from Sunday obligation is lifted, and people will be required to come to church again, will anyone show up? People who have gotten used to watching and becoming passive, and not participating in the liturgy, but watching it from a distance, from a safe distance. And I think that's a real valid question. We're being hit by so many things at one time. What's to become of our church? What's to become of our country? What's to become of our climate, our planet? What's to become of the human race? Will we even survive? We don't have any answers. We're not expected to have any answers. But when it comes to the church, St. Paul was very, very helpful in a sense. And we can apply this very, very much to what it is that we're going through. Because one thing that we can be certain of is that in the church, as in so much of life, what we are used to, business as usual, is over. It's over. That doesn't mean tradition is gone. That doesn't mean that all of things out here is gone. It doesn't mean that. But we can say business. Business as usual is.
Genesis, I appreciate it.
Okay. Where was it? Oh, business as usual. Business as usual. St. Paul actually anticipated that. He's very, very clear about that. He, for one thing, one of the things that very people, including the Pope, will be very happy to see disappear will be the kind of clericalism that has dominated the church for about 1,000 years, or at least since the Council of Trent. In other words, Pope Francis and all of us are called, he has called all of us to a kind of co-responsibility for all that is involved in the life of the church. All of them, including decision-making, planning for the future. And I think that this is a very, very positive development, and in fact it reflects our Eastern way of going about things, because we have always had the tradition of strong lay involvement in everything that goes on in the church. And I want to foster it and continue that. But St. Paul starts by pointing out a distinction. He says at the beginning of the first reading that we are God's co-workers, meaning the apostles. You are God's field, God's building. Then he goes on to talk about how whoever is building, that would be the apostles, can't build on any foundation other than the foundation of Jesus Christ and his gospel. And then what you build on, what the clergy of the church build on, will be tested by fire. And my brothers in the clergy, we are being tested by fire. So many ways. And it will be revealed whether what we built was built of stone, clay, straw. And every one of us, every member of the church, will get through it, but will have passed through fire to do that. And then he reminds not the apostles, the clergy, if you will, about what it is that they're building. He reminds them what they're building. He said, you are building a temple. And then he says to the people, don't you know that the temple, the Spirit of God dwells in you? That makes you a temple, a place of God's presence. And the temple of God, which is you, is holy. So if we wind back a little bit of the clericalism and the over-control by the clergy of what goes on in the church, does that mean that things will start to resemble more and more the rest of the world around us? Civil government, corporate governance. I pray to God, not. Because what we're seeing around us in all kinds of ways is the fire that's consuming all of us is eating up civil society, as well as it eats up the world economy. I don't want to be a person of doom and gloom. We are going to get through this, St. Paul said. But we are going to pass through fire. And what we have built on in the church will be revealed. And if we have built the temple of God, the Spirit of God living in it, that will be revealed. How will we know? How will we know that what we have built is good? First of all, we remember that it is not our church. It is God's church. It's God's temple, St. Paul says. And then we see what else it is that the apostles do by way of example. Now, to change metaphors a little bit, we were talking about buildings and what have you. Now let's talk about water. We know what to do with water, right? We drink it, we cook it with it, we clean with it, we swim in it, we wash with it. We don't walk. At least nobody that I know living today has walked on water. But Jesus said to St. Peter, as he says to all of us, take courage, This invitation of Jesus to Peter is extended also to us. It's being extended to the church in this life. Peter, who was a fisherman who knew something about water, suddenly had to cast aside everything he knew about water to follow Jesus by walking on water. Now, this isn't just a very nice and straight story, is it? We take it as an event that happened in the life of Jesus and in the life of Peter. Can you imagine what that does to you? To have had the experience of walking on water for a moment until your fear takes over and you start to sink. I think it changes you. You go around thinking, I walked on water. Wow. And yet I also failed to walk on water. I let my fear, my worry about the future, what's going to happen to me, I let that get in the way. And I started to sink, and I said, save me, Lord. I'm sure Peter was thinking about these things as he sat in prison. And Jesus extended his hand, lifted him up, bringing him back on top of him. Whatever it is, in concrete terms, in terms that we can understand, by way of the life of the church now going forward, indeed the life of the world going forward, it will be different. It will involve walking on water. We're called to be water walkers. Did you know that? A lot of us think that we're lucky to be able to go to bed as healthy but at night as we were when we got up in the morning. Or as rich, or at least surviving as well economically as we were when we got up. We tend not to expect much. And we look at our lives as if we were taking one stone, putting it on top of another, picking up here, putting it up. We seldom look at our lives as if we were building ourselves individually into a temple. And so we don't expect to walk on water. And we certainly don't expect to have to walk on water. But I think what Jesus is telling Peter as he tells the church, and I think what the Holy Spirit is telling the world about the church, is that these people who are followers of the incarnate Son of God, the very Word of God that created the universe, this universe that seems so deadly and so dangerous right now, the very Word that created this is the Word that says, it is I, have no fear, come, walk on water. And the whole crowd of water walkers will be in the middle of all of this flood. And by our love, our works of service, our generosity, our prayer, our fellowship with one another, everything that goes into making us Christian, making us Catholics, our communion with the source of life, the Holy Eucharist, that will be for the salvation of the world. Somehow, how the world gets through this will depend on how good we are at walking on water. Actually, no. It's not how good we are at walking on water. It's Jesus who enables us to walk on water. It's how good we are at trusting Him, taking Him at His word. Save when we need to, Lord, save us. Letting Him take our hand. Bring us to a place we did not expect to be. May God strengthen our church, our little Romanian Catholic flock, which is God's temple, God's church, for this task ahead. May He inspire us with the holy work, being the water walkers that the world needs right now. The ones who keep our heads about us and faith in God while the waves rise and the wind blows. May He make of us